Good morning, everyone. Good morning to the press. Good morning to Barbadians here at home and those watching online and those abroad. Welcome to our monthly press conference, where we here in the Democratic Labour Party will try to dig behind the headlines and analyze some of the issues facing Barbadians. Today, we're going to be looking at the estimate and the. I want to start by saying that the lens through which we will understand and assess the estimates really is the philosophy of the party. And that is one of social justice. Really, we've had a lot of loose talk about what's the philosophy of the Democratic Labour Party. The party has always had a philosophy. The founders of this party built this party on the idea and not only the idea, but importantly, the practice of social justice. So when we analyze, when we look at what's happened in this country, we always have to ask the question, are people better off? Are they being provided with opportunities so that they can improve their lives and the lives of their families? And that is what this party has always stood for. This party has always been about the betterment of Barbadians. And if anyone questions what the philosophy of of Barbados and of this Democratic Labour Party is, it is about social justice. Now, when we place that within the context of the estimates, what we get is an overall picture that the estimates do not move Barbados forward, they do not develop this country, and they do not provide opportunities for Barbadians. So let's dig into it a little bit. Now, the government is projected a deficit of about $844 million. So really, let's round it off to say we have $1 billion in deficit. That means the government's going to have to borrow an additional $1 billion. What does that actually mean? That means that there could be increases in potential taxes, and that means that there could be a decline in services that the government provides. When we look at it, this government over the last 5 years has borrowed about $4 billion. And I want to repeat that. This government over the last 5 years has borrowed $4 billion, including the current projected estimates. And that should really worry and concern every Barbadian. And it should concern us for a few reasons, because of the recent billion that they're going to borrow, 466 million is foreign debt. And the reason that the government's borrowing so much foreign money is that they destroyed the local debt market. They destroyed the local debt market during the restructuring, and now they have to hunt for foreign money. So in the estimates, there's a line item listed as other. And what that means is that the government doesn't know where it's going to get about $337 million of the billion that it needs to run the affairs of this country. In effect, the government is spending more money than it makes, and it also does not know how it's going to get some of the money that it intends to spend. And we should worry about a kind of inconspicuous column listed other. And it's not being explained by the government how they are going to source this other set of money. It means that the government doesn't know where it's going to get that 300 or so million dollars from. And in effect, we will continue to spend more than we currently earn. This will affect the lives of all Barbadians, and we deserve to know the true story of how this government's managing the affairs of this country. Because what else does it point to? It points to the fact, really, that you have so many consultants, you have supposed to be very clever people in the ministries, you have clever people in the central bank, and somehow the government still cannot explain to us how it is going to finance the affairs of the government and essentially the affairs of Barbados. Now, furthermore, when we delve into the estimates a little bit more, the fact that this 300 and something million dollars in financing is from domestic investors, and it well exceeds what has been given before. So let's peel back this a little bit. Previously, under other administrations, we've been able to get more money from domestic investors. So domestic investors in 2017 provided $1.3 billion. In 2020, they provided about 44 million. In 2021, they provided about 148 million. In 2022, 171 million. And much of this was from the central bank, which has limited capacity to provide some of that emergency funding. And it could also explain why the COVID protocols were extended for as long as they were. No, the reality is this equation that we have here is not working out because what we're probably going to hear in the upcoming budget is that the government's going to have to increase taxes or it's going to have to borrow from the international markets. So we still have no growth industry. How is the government going to cover the current shortfall? And we therefore have to keep a keen eye, and I'm calling all Barbadians to keep a keen eye on the budget next week to see where the government's going to talk about sourcing the additional funding that it needs to run this country and to run the affairs of Barbados. Now, this brings us back to the fact that the government will be trying to fill the borrowing through the domestic market. But as I said before, they destroyed the bond market, ruined the lives of savings, of pensioners who should be living out their golden years, helping out their grandchildren, helping out their children, but they're not. I hear these cries when I walk around in St. James South. Particularly, this has been an issue for persons who did the right thing, who did the right thing by their country. They stood by their country, they invested in their country, and they were essentially punished by this government. So during the estimates, you heard Minister Strawn begging Barbadians to buy government bonds. You had the chief government advisor, now the governor of the central bank, assured previously that confidence had returned to the bond market. Then why are people not taking out the bonds? And the only thing that Minister Strawn did not seem to do is to get down on his knees to beg Barbadians to take up the bonds. You know, the reality is the big man, big woman approach during the debt restructuring killed the bond market. So sweet words will not bring confidence and buyers back. The government must first acknowledge what it did and then take concrete steps to build confidence by giving assurances and reducing its borrowing. With a borrowing at about $1 billion, that's obviously going to spook people who would want to invest in government bonds. We also know Minister Strawn talked a lot about indirect taxes. And furthermore, the central bank governor, who at that time wasn't the governor in 2020, at a BCCI luncheon, made the point that this government was shifting a lot from indirect to from direct to indirect taxes. So is Minister Strawn basically foreshadowing tax raises in the budget? So say, for example, levies. So levies could be increasing service of points fees at the QUH. And that way people are paying more for the government services that they require. The reality is many of the challenges confronting Barbados that this government claimed that they've inherited in 2018 have not been resolved. We can look back at the fact that they tried to address the debt burden, and even that has been somewhat as a failure because we're now paying 31 cents for every single tax dollar now goes to repay debt. That means that that's 31 cents that's not being used to build roads, to build a hospital, to build new schools, to fund education, to fund healthcare. So the social issues are still a problem, and in some instances, some Barbadians, when we are out there on the ground talking to people, will tell you that they're worse for our government now in its second term. You know, and it's interesting that Minister Strawn admitted during the estimates that the government lost 3 years to COVID. I take that as an admission that this government has failed and is failing. The reality is you cannot be a fair weather government. Every single government in the history of Barbados has been confronted by global challenges, some of a significant or near magnitude as COVID, and COVID cannot be an excuse for non-performance and incompetence. The PM speaks the language of transformation, but where is the transformation? Where is the new Barbados that we were promised? When we go through the estimates, we do not see the direction, the pointers of transformation. Take, for example, that the estimates show that the underlying issues have not changed. On average, over the last 5 years, the government of Barbados seems to spend between, say, $3 to $4 billion, earning around 2.5 to 3 billion. So we have a shortfall really of around $1 billion a year for the last 5 years. This trend in current expenditure should be a concern in light of the fact that 3 major statutory corporations, let's think about this, Barbados Tourism Marketing Inc., and the Barbados Tourism Product Authority, uh, uh, Sanitation Services Authority, and partly the Queen Elizabeth. So they were removed from the consolidated fund, and that accounted for $215 million. So, despite approximately $250 million of annual expenditure no longer being reflected in the estimates, the current estimates of the government show little change or a little downward trend. So, in effect, put it this way, the government was able to take out $250 million being funded directly by the people of Barbados, but their budgetary processes and their spending did not go down or was not reduced. They kept spending the same amount. So in effect, they were spending another $215 billion on the backs of the people of Barbados, but no results to show for it. So you've taken the statutory corporations out of the consolidated fund. We don't really know how that money is being spent, but you still are continuing to spend the same amount of money that you've reduced. Makes no sense. So what's the government doing with this money? What are the results of the borrowing? And by the analysis, the increased revenue, as I said, given many of these statutory corporations were moved off the books and are now funded directly by us, the taxpayers, whether it's the sewage tax, the hospital levy, the pandemic levy, the air room and rates levies, you can go on. And, and they try to be clever by calling them levies. They're just taxes. Taxes in another form, directly from us, the taxpayers, to the particular institutions. So when we look at the data, it suggests that the major changes in the structure of the government expenditure have not really changed since 2018, and the removal of these organizations where the funding now comes directly from the public entities. So the underlying structure of government and the transformation that we've promised has not materialized. I understand that the Prime Minister had some advice for me as an opposition leader and for those who practice opposition politics. And I would like to return that favor in kind and to give her some advice about practicing government and government politics. And I will start by saying, really, I pity the Prime Minister. Nothing really more than pity, because it takes a special kind of person, and it must be nice when you live your life in glorious contradictions. I would remind the Prime Minister, as opposition leader, she walked up, down, across Barbados, marched thousands of people, went abroad, talked down the government, told everybody to buy this, not to do this, not to engage in this. So what I would suggest for the Prime Minister is to focus and do some actual governing. Don't worry about the opposition or the Democratic Labour Party or the type of opposition politics that we practice. We will continue to practice the politics that we think is necessary to focus on the people of this country. Why my advice to the Prime Minister and to the government is to focus and get things done. Get it done. Do the job that you were elected to do, overwhelming the mandate twice, and focus on the people of Barbados. Even, I think, the government's strongest supporters must concede that this is a government of none job and few results. And we want no more excuses. This morning, it was reported in the news media, across all the media, the head of the Barbados Hotel Tourism Association is confirming the continued poor performance in tourism, even in January 2023. As she said, it's going to take some time. We need to take time for some analytical thinking and new efforts in marketing Barbados, because Barbados is underperforming compared to our regional neighbors. When we informed the country earlier this year that the tourism arrivals were down by some 250,000, and that we showed a decline of about 40% over the arrival numbers, we were questioned. The minister at that point hurried and called the press conference with those from the Barbados Marketing Tourism Organization, trying to debunk the figures. Here we have the Barbados, the head of the Barbados Tourism Association, basically saying exactly the same thing that we said, and confirming the shortfall in our tourism numbers and that we need to do more work. I wonder what the minister's response will be and those of the Barbados Tourism Marketing. We were correct. And we stand by the numbers and the figures that we gave at that time. They've now been confirmed, and the reality is numbers don't lie. The minister could have cherry picked, and he can cherry pick all he wants. We don't need to do that. We will speak the truth, and we will speak to the numbers. The reality is that we've had a failed experiment in tourism, 3 ministers, and the one probably who should have been there first is now tasked with carrying water in baskets made by the 2 ministers prior. Furthermore, this government is a litany of failures. We've had the IDB survey report still not released, and the travesty committed on our children. We've got a tourism slogan that's also missing a year after the committee has been set up. We have a minister in the form of Kim Company who piloted the data protection legislation and the digital ID project as the innovation minister, also presided over the breach of the IADB. And now, 2 years later, we see the problems with the digital ID project. We cannot trust this government to do right by us. That is just the reality. We can ask, how many houses has the Minister of Housing built? 10,000 were promised last year around this same time. How much of the current foreign reserve the government brags about have been borrowed? Government has borrowed a whopping $4 billion over the last 5 years. What's the value we get from this? You know, we hear the Minister of Foreign Affairs talk about how they're going to spend $3.2 million in new embassies. And he said it so glibly, so passive, as if it says, oh, $3.2 million. But where are the results of all of these new missions and these new embassies being set up? You know, I think, as I said, it must be a pity for the Prime Minister to have to manage this cabal of incompetence. The scrutiny of the last government was tough, it was relentless, and that was right. The scrutiny of this current government must be tough, and it must be relentless, and that must be right. What was good for one surely must be good for the other. It must always be about Barbados first, and it must always be about putting the people of this country first. The government is not quite the competence that we were promised, more of a transformative disappointment. It is profound that supposedly such a talented bunch of people on paper, as we're told, forms this cabal of incompetence. But, you know, for the sake of Barbados and for the sake of Barbadians and all of us, we have to live here. I hope that the Prime Minister and this government gets their act together. And I would suggest that she focus a strategy on reform and don't keep taxing us to the ground. Because as Prime Minister famously once said, you can't tax your way out of recession. You can't tax your way out of a problem. We can only grow our way out of this. And as we suggested in the last campaign, service zones. That is one idea we put on the table. And I remember the Prime Minister last year picked it up. And since then, nothing has happened. With most things, it seems that this government picks up. These new zones would be important because they would facilitate foreign and domestic investment and investment for the diaspora, new industries and manufacturing, creative industries, renewables, financial technology, software design, law, arbitration services. And importantly, they will provide jobs for our young people. And in fact, what we're trying to do and what we're trying to do is to bring the world to Barbados so our young people do not have to leave to find opportunities to fulfill the Barbadian dream and do the things that their parents do. All this means is job creation for our people. And the reality is, how hard is it for this government to make job creation a priority? So, no more excuses from this cabal of incompetence. The government was given not one, but 2 overwhelming mandates. So, do some work. I now hand over to my colleague, Paul Gibson.
Good morning again. Let me take this time to extend greetings to those celebrating World Kidney Week. It is a significant week. We're seeing quite a lot of kidney-related diseases and so on in Barbados. And it's also World Disability Month. And we have quite a few disabled among us. So we celebrate you, and we hope and pray that you are having a good week and a good month. One of the observations from Head 86, which is that of health, is the fact that we are seeing that there are some very large deficits, very large gaps between what are the budgeted expenses and what is required to run the country. This is of great concern to us because in the well of the house, one of the things we realize is that that a lot of the minister and others were making promises and making commitments in regards to the improvements of health. When we now reflect on the budgets and the line items under cap 86, we're seeing that even though there is espousing that there will be a revolution in the primary healthcare of Barbados, that they have only given $1 million in that line for polyclinics in terms of an increase. And I'm telling you, $1 million, it doesn't make any sense. Just to put an X-ray machine at the Sir Winston Scott Polyclinic is about $500,000. So that $1 million has already been spent, blown, by making one singular purchase. And so the point is that we have to ensure that that we focus on what needs to be done, but more importantly, provide the funds required to execute. We can no longer play with our primary health care. We realize that the QEH is under tremendous pressure, and unless we get the polyclinics running the way they're supposed to run, we are going to find ourselves in a significant problems, not only now, but in the future. Barbados used to be known as the land of amputation, the amputation capital of the world, because of the high level of diabetes and so on. And we are so concerned that because of the diminishing of the services at the polyclinic level, that this will be our title again very soon if you don't careful. So if all of these promises that were made in terms of cardiac care, in terms of dressings, wound care, ophthalmic care to retard the onset of macular degeneration and cataracts and so on, if we're serious about mitigating that, we have to spend the money where it matters. And as when we look at the numbers right now, it's making absolutely no sense because there is no money. The deficit is almost $844 million, and you're starting behind the ball. And we have not yet heard where these funds will be coming from. So that speaks to the competence of the government. We continue to point it out. It is not good to do a song and dance and make promises. It has to be that the numbers must be real. I think Barbadians are having an issue of trust with this government. We saw it with the publishing of the voters list. We saw it with the compromise at the QEH. We're now seeing it with the digital ID. And so we are seeing a trend of mistrust. And Barbadians are getting uncomfortable with this government in terms of being able to trust them. They must be able to trust what they're saying. We also, the Democratic Party are calling for an audit of the millions spent by the government during the COVID pandemic. Now, if you have future pandemics, you want to know how much it costs you. So even if the exercise is done to get a sense as to what the world's largest pandemic cost, we at least need to know where those dollars were spent. We need to know how much money was spent for vaccines, for masks, to build the facility in St. Lucie. These are things that we need to know because a comprehensive analysis of that is very important. Lots of money was spent, lots of money was borrowed to spend on that project and that pandemic. And so we need to give account for it to the people of Barbados. And in light of the vaccine, the debuncle specifically that was signed off by the Ministry of Health, we are even more, it is even more important that we call for this audit because there are obviously some other things happening behind the curtain that Barbadians need to be aware of. And so we're asking that this be a priority for the government going forward in 2023, 2024. There was talk in the well of the House in respect to the Queen Elizabeth Hospital being used as leverage in terms of the property, the lands, the state lands, being used for loans. Now, this, of course, had our ears all pricked up because we are saying, how is it that the government could be looking to engage the lands of the QH, to engage the QH in a loan facility, and we are starting in a deficit? Now, if you can't pay your current expenditure, cover your current expenditure, how is it that you will be making loans for the QEH? Because the bank or the facility lending you those loans will be calling back for their money. And if you already cannot pay back the other loans, how are you going to pay back the QEH loans? So the question that the Democratic Labour Party is asking is, are we going to be changing the healthcare model in Barbados where we are in the coming years, where we end health as we know it? Are we now going to be asking Barbadians to be paying for healthcare in this country in a new way? There was a gentleman in St. Peter that brought to the attention of the Prime Minister that there was a charge of $250 a year ago for a colonoscopy, and 1 year later or so, he's now being paid $1,250. And he asked the question, and it was a very good question. How is it that Barbadians are now paying for colonoscopies, first and foremost? But then how is it now that we got from $250 to $1,250? And we are just hoping as a party, and the people of Barbados are asking, is this going to become a trend in the future? And so this highlights the issues that we're having with the duplicity in the approach to health, the fact that there is mystique behind a lot of what is being said and done. It is not making any sense. And as the gentleman said, make it make sense, because you are raising funds, you are incurring additional costs, and we are seeing a changing of the model that we're not comfortable with. And so tell us what is going on. We are paying a health levy already. So money is being spent towards health. So tell us what is going on. We are not sure. Barbadians want some answers. We want to find out as well from the government what is happening with this aging population of Barbados. In the estimates, we are not seeing where the government is preparing for a population that would represent 44% of the population by 2030. There is no planning for old people's homes. There's no plan for care. There's just no plans. I'm not sure what is happening, but we need to be preparing for Barbadians, the elderly, and preparing for this aging population. I am very concerned that the estimates did not address the substantive issues of health, and we have not yet seen how the QEH will be decompressed. So our healthcare system is significantly compromised, and we need to really reevaluate these estimates and find out exactly where all the money is going to be coming from, because right now there is no money on the books to cover all of the promises made in the well of the house for healthcare in this country. It is a tremendous concern. And again, there's a level of mistrust, and a level of incompetence being demonstrated by the government. And that is these are my words.
We'll turn over to our representative on Labour, Sir Walter Maloney.
Hey, good morning, members of the press, members of the Democratic Labour Party, the citizens of this country, and surely brothers and sisters in the diaspora who eagerly look forward to words of comfort from the Democratic Labour Party as to how this country is being run and governed and how we think it should be done better. Recently, you would have heard the government and the unions would have reached a settlement on wages. And I think that we in the Democratic Labour Party should be thankful that the unions and indeed the government would have listened to us, because we would have said before anything between 5 and 7, and then we drill down to 6%. That is exactly what the unions would have settled for with government, a 6% increase. And so I think that once again, this party has shown the kind of maturity that is expected from a party that is expected to form the government sooner rather than later. We will not have made the same mistake as those who were in opposition and who would have marched up and down Broad Street, engaged in public service and into some fairy tale of a 23% increase, knowing fully well that the government of the day was not able to carry an increase of that magnitude. So once again, I think we have shown our maturity as a party, and this is what we thought was capable, and that is what we thought was right to do. But going on from all the platitudes I'm given to the unions and the government, there's some things we need to look at. Firstly, I wondered why the unions would have ended a 3-year contract. I would have thought that 2-year contract would be the most amicable thing, because you enter a 3-year contract basically by getting the first year a $1,500 allowance or one-off payment, which is not attributed to your pension. It is not attached to your salary, so it is not pensionable nor gratuitous as well. And then you get a 3% in the second year and a 3% in the third year. One would have thought, the way the economy is going now, it would have made more sense asking for government to front load than instead of having a 3 and 3. So you say, give me 4.5% up front, let me deal with that. Hopefully that would bring me to some point around 23, 24, and then you do 1.5% in the back end. And to me, that would have made more sense, because it would allow persons a little bit more disposable income than if you give them the 3%. And so that is one of our concerns. The other concern really has to do with pensioners. And we know that pensioners have been calling us, they've been calling the party, they've been speaking to the president, wondering what is next for us. The rule of thumb used to be, and I am waiting to hear from the government what the position is, although I was told recently that, yes, the government is looking at giving pensioners some amount. The quantum, I don't know. But I will say this, that before, it used to be 1.5% of whatever the percentage that the public servants will get. And so we're waiting to hear from government what is their position, because to be clear, if you use the rule of thumb and you decide that you're going to give the pensioners 1.5% of 3, and one can work out in the brain right away, if your pension is $2,500 or you're getting the pension from National Insurance, this is about $2,600, and you were going to get 1.5 of 3%, you can work out the math as to whether that makes sense to you or not. And so that is why the point I made about front loading would allow the pensioners to get a little bit more money. So that is something we need to look at as well. So I'll wait to hear what the government's position is on that. But surely they must give the pensioners an increase. After, and according to what the president just said, after the pensioners in Barbados was treated with just such callous respect, where you force them, a lot of them, on the poverty line or below the poverty line, because they would have took the money and bought in the government paper that became useless to them. And so we will hope that this so-called caring government would make every effort to look after the pensioners. But since we are on that point, there is something that came up that seems very, very confusing to me. Sissy Presser here, you can go on the Treasury's website and you can read it for yourself. On the website, the Treasury is speaking about pensions. It says that temporary continuous workers working for 12 years or less and leaving the service during this period will not receive a pension. We all know that persons working for 10 years, if you work 10 years in public service, you're entitled to a pension. So the question I'm asking is when did this change come about? Where did the extra 2 years came about? I've spoken to a number of persons who I know are intimately involved in this, and they replied to me that they are not okay with this. But yet it is on the Treasury's website. So we need that to be clarified. And because I can tell you what happens. Huh? In most cases, you will get persons who might have worked in the private sector or working from job to job, and they perform together their job working at, say, I'm watching the school. So a guy would say, well, if we can get him for 10 years, I know we get a trial up and go. Right? According to this, there's no trial up. That's what I'm saying? There's no trial up. But it goes on even further. It says that temporary continuous workers working for 12 years or less and leaving the service during this period will not receive a pension. So the other question that we need to, the pension, if the post was, let me go back. Pension if the post they were in was established or vacant. So in other words, if you were working for 12 years or more, in order for you to get the pension, you should have been working in an established or vacant post. And it goes on to say you may. So it's not that you are entitled to, you may get a pension. And I think we need to get these ambiguities clarified because one, it would make a lot of people uneasy. A fellow who would have worked the 10 years surely would have been saying, well, I satisfy the requirement, and so at least I would be able to get a little pension when the month comes. But according to this, and the Treasury is responsible for pensions. Now, if this appears on the Treasury's website, and you're telling me that other persons in the public service is not aware, I think we need to understand what is going on here. Okay? And I leave that to the press because that's your job to investigate these things. And so I will leave it as that. But coming back to the more poignant position that we need to discuss here, it is not necessarily the increases in the salary. But what is really attracting a lot of attention to persons in the public service is the fact as to whether or not they will be entitled or have a job after the 1st of April 2023. Persons have called. They said, yes, we got the increase. But I'm not satisfied, I'm still going to have a job. And so we started to look at areas. The welfare agencies are supposed to be amalgamated. Okay? And there's a fear that there will be some level of displacement in there. Because clearly, once you put all the agencies together, staff complement, you will not be. So some persons will lose their jobs. They've realized that the transfers to SOEs has either diminished or been cut drastically. That says that there will be some level of displacement in those agencies as well. So the fear and the trepidation, thankful for the increase, but the real fear and trepidation to persons working in the public service is whether or not they will have a job. And that is what we need to look at. And so, yes, we thank the government for giving the increase. Should have been more. Well, recently we said 6%. But I'll say this. This was the opportune moment for the unions in this country when they sat down in front of the government to say, look, we are going to negotiate salaries and conditions of service, because some people don't realize there's something called conditions of service attached to the negotiations as well. And before we accept any increase, these are the things we need to discuss. We need to make certain that persons who are in the public service have been working for 10 or 12 or 50 years, that we can get them appointed. Because whatever is coming, we need to safeguard them. Okay? And so we are not signing off until you can make and guarantee to us that this will happen. So you try your best to delimit whatever fallout of jobs as much as possible. And that should have been one of the priorities. Let us look, because we cannot wait after budget to then hear the government say we have to lay off all these people, and then the unions are playing catch up as to how we can try to stop people from losing jobs. It should have been placed on the table then. Let us discuss. It is clear to us. Come clean with us. What is it that you are expected to do? Is it that you will be persons will be losing their jobs? Let us look at the amount of persons. If there's 1,000, 3,000, let us see how best we can bring it to a manageable portion. Because at the end of the day, and I keep saying, one person losing a job in this country is one too many. There are too many people in Barbados whose salary is not only spent in their household. Their salaries are going to have the brothers and sisters, those out there who are paying rent and lost their jobs. There are persons who are the children, have children that live and are married and on the brink of losing whatever house they have because they can't afford to pay the mortgage, and especially pensioners who still at this rate in their lives having to look after the children who's 45 years old because they are not working. So you have to take your pension or whatever savings you have to try to help them. So the issue here is bigger than, is much, much larger than just having a salary increase. There's more to it than that. It is how do we go about to make certain we safeguard jobs. Yes, we expect there will be some dislocation. That the economy is going gradually as it is now, no mind all the talk about how many reserves we have and all that. The fact remains is that we live in this society and we know, we can see for ourselves that people are hurting. And it has no difference whether you are working or not working, you are hurting. And so to not to extend the hurt further, it would have been the right of the unions to look after those persons who are vulnerable and those who are the ones who might be out of a job more so than the persons who are permanent. We just had an increase, yes. We talk about allowances and persons jumping and say, but the government gave people allowances. There's less than 2% of people in the public service get allowances. Persons in the SK will get allowances, we get fixed traveling. Get entertainment, after some of them get entertainment, some will get the phone speed. The fella at the bottom, who just received a 3% increase, he's getting about $53 in his hand. And I got before taxes. Another $53. Cost of living still going up. We are waiting to hear from the FTC as to what kind of rate increases that I just realized the Power is challenging that too, but that is coming back, right? So we can rest assured energy is going to go up. We are seeing what is happening for our water bills, right? We don't know what's going to happen yet with those of us who have natural gas, right? But we know for certain that every month, our ability to save becoming less and less. And that is a fact. And it doesn't make a difference to me if you're working for $5,000 or if you're only working for $2,000. The reality is it is difficult for Bajans to save. If you ask anyone who are a member of the credit union now is money in, money out. Salaries go to the credit union today, and by tomorrow, most people's accounts are empty. Because they take up all the salaries and they go and pay bills and stuff like that. So it's just there to channel their money. Okay? And those are the realities that we have to be dealing with. And so we have to be cognizant that although an increase is being paid, yes, $1,500. People jump up and we give them $1,500. But I'll tell you what, just like the salaries go into the credit union today and they're out tomorrow, the $1,500 will be given in the left hand and out in the right hand in less than 24 hours. Take it. There is nothing to jump up and down. Yes, any extra money is something that you are thankful for. But it's not anything to jump up and down at. Okay? But the fact still remains is that this uneasiness, the disquiet within the public service stems from the fact that persons are not clear as to whether or not they will have a job later. And you can look into the estimates and you realize that there are a number of areas, a number of jobs, a number of posts where no monies have been attached to them. So it tells you that these are posts that are not going to be filled either. They're not going to be filled. And the whole idea there comes back to this whole thing of contract work again. How do this contract work fits into the normal public service? Because once you fill in the posts, it means that the people behind cannot be appointed or looked to get promoted. So you're given contracts as a short-term thing that people work for 4 months, 3 months, whatever. Government only has to pay them, have to work for a year, you get them a maturity, and that's it. But the person behind them, there's no more for them either. So there's a number of things that must be taken into consideration. And I also want to touch on the private sector, because people tend to feel that the public sector lives in some vacuum. It doesn't exist in a vacuum. It exists in an economy where the private sector and the public sector depend on each other. So if there will be displacements within the private sector, as we know is going to come, we know for certain the government has already said persons will be going home. Those persons who work in the Ashton and other areas, COVID people, others will be going home on the 31st of March. But then you add the other persons who the SOEs and staff who will be going. You add the other persons who work in ministry government who are not appointed. What that does in effect is to put pressure, especially on the retail sector, because there are no monies now for persons to go and splurge. That is one part. The servants do very well. They purchase, they spend money. And once that is retracted or contracted, it means then that the retail sector will have no more, they will have nothing other to do than to look at sending home some of their staff as well. And we have seen that happen before, and now is not any different. So I think we at the Democratic Party, what we are saying really, is that yes, we are glad that common sense prevail and both the government and the unions will listen to us as far as the increases are concerned. We did not agree with the fact that you allowed a 2-year contract. We thought that was madness. We think it should have been 2. We do believe that you should have gone to front load it instead of equalized it with a 3. You could have given a 4.5, give the person money up front, and let them, what they have to do, and then you get your 1.5 back. We are yet to hear what they're going to say as far as the pensioners are concerned. I was told that something will be coming, but we will wait to see what the quantum is. We've got to be made certain that whatever is coming, I would hope they will not use the rule of thumb of just 1.5 for 3. I think we should use 1.5 for 6. Perfect. Okay? Instead of saying we can get 1.5 for 3 first year, 1.5 for, I did for the same public service. I think it would be wrong to do it for the pensioners. Because let's be clear, pensioners in this country are running a budget just as much so as persons who continue to work. Right? So when you give them these small little increases, it is not in any way helpful to them. So it's going to as well give them the 1.5 on the 6%. Right? But more so than ever, this party is calling on the government to come clean. Let persons know what is going to be happening. We are seeing it. You are admitting it. There will be a level of displacement in Barbados. How do we go about trying to minimize numbers? It's going to be crucial. And like I said before, that should have formed part of the discussion when the unions met with government. When the unions met with the government, it's not only to say we want an increase, but we also want to be able to put in a position to safeguard as much jobs as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We are open for questions.
Yes, hi, good morning. Paul Bernardi from Nation News. I know the interests your projection for the budget, like the election taxes, given the deficit that must be closed, and especially when you put that in context. To the fact that under IMF program that we are embarking on, we are supposed to be shooting for, I think this year will be a 1% surplus within that context as well. However, would the reform of state enterprises account for some closing of that deficit?
Well, I think the reform in the state money enterprise is an important part of the transformation of Barbados, and the short answer would normally be yes. But the reason that this government has shown a kind of proclivity towards spending is that reforming of state-owned enterprises might not bring down the deficit. Because remember what I said. I said they took the QEH, they took BTMI, they took a number of statutory corporations off of the government books already. So you would have thought that they would have decreased the budget by the amount, which is about 250 million, but they kept spending. So the reform of state-owned enterprises might not actually reduce the government budget because this government seems to have an ability to spend without results. So in normal circumstances, your logic would work. You reform the state-owned enterprises, the budget's supposed to go down. We've actually seen them remove these state-owned enterprises from the consolidated fund, but the amount of spending has not been reduced. So the 250 million or so that these organizations would have spent is still somehow being spent by central government, although these organizations have now moved from central government budget.
Follow-up question. The picture painted by both yourself and Mr. Maloney, quite glum indeed. One of more taxation, possibility of layoffs. Obviously, within the context of heightened cost of living, that is a rather gloomy picture indeed. If I may ask you to stretch your projections a bit further, what are you possibly seeing as the further social impacts should your projections prove right as it relates to job cuts and taxation?
I wouldn't want to be a clairvoyant, and I would wait for the Prime Minister's budget, which is next week. The Prime Minister does not usually do her budget, so it's very interesting that we're going to have a budget statement this year. So I suspect that there are going to be some big announcements regarding taxes and regarding the state-owned enterprises. There must be. So we are going to wait until that point, and then we would have our further comments. But all I will say is that deficit under the estimates of about 250, 300 million dollars has to be closed. So that money has to be found from somewhere. At the moment, the government seems unclear of where it's going to find that money. We saw Minister Strong during the estimates really on bended knee for Barbadians to take up the bonds. But this is obviously problematic given what the government did to the bond market during the restructuring and the fact that people would have invested their life savings. People, as I said, people did the right thing. People have always done the right thing when it comes to government because it's always about Barbados. And they were punished for it, and now there is a reluctance to engage in government bonds, and I understand it, and I can only support the reluctance because I too would not be buying any government bonds under this current situation until the government can give the reassurances that the bonds would be secured in a way, not that anything is risk-free, but that they pretty much know what they did last time in terms of the haircut, in terms of what they did to those pensioners who are, as Walter said, are still suffering and who are now sometimes managing not only their households, but other households of their kids who really should not be in that situation. So we have a real problem with the government at this moment, and I am deeply concerned about closing of that gap because there's only two ways to close that gap: borrow some more or taxes, or we have to grow our way out of it. And the government has not shown a growth plan, and it's not shown a propensity to want to engage in serious growth industries. It's not shown any plans for tourism. It's not showing how they're going to reboot that industry. It's not showing how they're going to get new industries up and all we get is a lot of talk and we walk at this particular moment.
I don't know if anyone else has any questions, but I'll just, I guess, continue if no one does. You also touched on tourism, and you used the word in the words of the, and I see Minister C, the former Minister Sealy is here as well, and I guess he wants to. Uh, and you use the her analysis of the performance of the tourism sector, not the fact that it's performance. We did notice that there were changes to the from the onset to the BTMI, etc., new CEO, etc. Is this performance in any way an indictment on the performance of that entity?
Well, I will offer some comments, and as former Minister of Tourism, Richard Sealy is also now a current representative and spokesperson on tourism. I would allow him to weigh in because this party is bent on using its resources and using its talent and using its experience, and we really welcome Richard on board as part of our team. But what I will say, it is an indictment. We've had three ministers of tourism. We've had a committee for a slogan that still hasn't reported. We've had a new board in terms of BTMI, and we are still at the same position. Really, when you look at the media this morning, you had the Barbados Hotel and Tourism Association had making the point that there are no more. We can have no more excuses for underperformance. And I just want to quote what she said, because I don't like to misquote people. And her point, it says that we have to, when we look at our performance relative to the rest of the world, the rest of the region, we are very aware that Barbados fell below global and regional averages in our pace of recovery. That is not the Democratic Party. That is the head of the Barbados Hotel and Tourism Association making that point. And we have to take this seriously. And the point is that really, and she goes on, no longer have COVID as a justification. And so we will need to interrogate our information even more seriously to ensure that we're staying ahead of our competitive set and that we in the industry are bringing our A game to the table. So there can be no more excuses. It is time that this government sets to work. I think, and this is a fair assessment, I think the government enjoys campaigning, it enjoys the energy and the hype of campaigning, but the government does not know how to govern. There's that old saying, what you campaign in poetry, you govern in prose. And this government is good at campaigning, but it just cannot govern. And that is just the reality. I wish this is the second term. This is the second term government, and they still haven't settled down to the act of being a government, how to just get on with the daily job of the daily grind. Some things it's boring. I'm sure Mrs. Sealy can tell you it's boring. When the excitement you get here, boring, you sit down the file, you do the work that you're supposed to do, so you get the results that you're supposed to get. And we're not getting that from this government. Yeah, so.
Sorry. I can ask you to repeat the question, Calvin, if you don't mind, just so I don't go too
Sure,
far.
sure, no problem. Basically, I was asking, based on the analysis put forward by the BHDA, and that basically tourism is not performing even in the aftermath of COVID. Is this an indictment on on the organs of that are driving the industry, especially the new look TMI, headed by a new CEO?
Well, just prior to the appointment of the new CEO, I was critical of that appointment. Not because of the gentleman's passport or his nationality, but I was in a position to speak about the level of effort that went into building up the muscle of that organization at the management level. One of the problems that the Barbados Tourism Authority had that of course preceded BTMI is that we had to always fly in these CEOs from near and far, and therefore the youngsters that were looking to build careers within the organization didn't feel like if there was any career path within the organization. So we deliberately went about the business of training up some of the managers that were there. We did some transfers and so on that were even seen as controversial, even though it worked out well in the end. And we recruited some new folks as well. So you found that we had Billy Griffith was always supposed to be a night watchman. He had a full career in Bermuda and he came back home. And the idea is that he would have spent a couple of years and we surrounded him with all of these young managers that could have emerged. There was a new person responsible for social media. I think that was historic in Barbados in the public service, that is. We brought in someone to deal with Caribbean and Latin America. We moved Cheryl from Canada to the UK, promoted Peter. He then started to run Canada. Of course, Petra went from the UK to North America. We were building a bank of managers, future CEOs. It was in the context of not promoting from within that I was critical of Jens Lenz or whatever, gentleman from Switzerland, Canada, Germany. They tell me he got about 2 or 3 passports. I don't know anything about him. But I will say, since his utterances and so on becoming CEO of the BTMI, he really sounds like he would have done better at the Caribbean Tourism Organization, a developmental organization. He speaks a lot about product. He speaks a lot about the need to embrace our culture and so on. I mean, you look at his CV, I'm not so sure he's the best fit for a destination marketing organization. He seems a little uncomfortable with those issues of projections and bed nights and airlift capacity and linking it to the marketing element. I don't hear the hardcore marketing stuff coming from him. And I wonder if he is the best fit. And I actually gather for some intelligence that there's a move afoot to look beyond him. I don't know what else to say about that. Again, I have not formally met him, just from what I have observed. He doesn't seem to me like if he's terribly comfortable in a marketing position. Maybe he'd been better off doing something else. The product authority, even if it was still around, of course. But that's all I have to say really about him. Nothing personal. I was advocating promoting from within, and then you can purchase specialist skills as need be to supplement what was going on. That's what we were trying to do. That was one of the objectives of the restructuring. The Barbados Tourism Authority had a fairly bad reputation for not promoting from within, especially at the highest level. So that is where we were in that regard. And certainly related to that is the fact that the morality organization seems to be at an all-time low. A lot of people leaving and have left. And so to your point, you can't have an organization where people aren't comfortable, people are looking to leave to market the destination worldwide. And I hope as well that that can be fixed, because what you heard from Renee is very true. And those, I mean, y'all, Renee is a very straight shooter, as you probably realize when you have your briefings with her. She doesn't mince words, and she's correct. We can get into the squabbling about a month up here and a month down there, but you really need to be more strategic, especially now in this post-COVID environment. This is why emphasis on your product, emphasis on investment. We don't hear anything about that. Basically, leftover projects from the last government are being promoted as if this is brand new cooked food. There's nothing new going on. I mean, the Indigo project was talked about when I was minister. Sam Lars, we know about that. Sandals, I mean, we need to have more activity. And the destinations that are outpacing us, it is not by chance that they're also outpacing us in terms of the rate of investment. A lot of investment is going in, and we seem to be struggling in that department. I hear investor confidence, but we now need to see it happening, because it is reality that in the near and medium term, the growth that we need in this economy has to be driven by tourism. And that is in no way subtracting from brand new areas that we need to move into. As a matter of fact, I always held the view that tourism is perfect for even opening up those opportunities for services and so forth that have an international flavor that can earn the valuable exchange. So that's where we are in that regard.
Final question from me. I know you don't have a representative for culture here. However, recently we saw the NCF announcing that they will be removing the Party Monarch component from the Kapoor celebrations. I just want to get your thoughts on that, and maybe Minister Seeley can also chime in also with this makeup of Kapova mixed into the emancipation, etc. Basically, the entire package. How marketable is it from a tourism perspective, especially with the soft season of tourism? So,
Okay, on the point about the restructuring of the Soca Party Monarch, I stand with the artists. They have succinctly expressed their point. You have Mr. Dale Weather, you have Mr. Jamal Slocum. They have made the case, and I think that they should be heard. And what was more worrying for me, beyond the specifics of the issue, was that the issue symbolic of the behavior of this government. Because their issue was the same issue that they had with the ID card, they had with IADB, they had with the tourism slogan. And it was no consultation, nobody didn't talk to us. We just literally woke up, heard about this, saw it happen to us, and then we're forced to respond. And when you respond, you're vilified because you're seen as against the government. When really you have the interest of Barbados at heart for a government that does not feel, because it seems to think that I have 30 seats and I can do whatever I want, whenever I want, however I want, to anybody I want, anywhere I want. And really, I stand with them because they're making a point that they should have been consulted, especially the younger and the junior artists who need and use the competition to help their careers. The older, more mature artists probably don't need the competition because they'll get appearance fees. They can demand what fees they want. You're now coming into the space. The competition is a way to get into that space, to create opportunities for young people, especially for government. I like to talk about how much it cares about young people. Why would you destroy something that actually opens doors for these young people? So, Mr. Slocum and Mr. Rudder, they've made their points clear, and we stand with them, and I support them in this initiative. And we wish them obviously the best, and whatever support we can lend to them, we will get that publicly and privately.
I could not attempt to add to that response in any way possible. I agree with every single word the president just said. This is a time to be widening opportunities, not limiting them. Well said, and I agree with that.
Well, I was hoping to get your perspective from a marketing perspective of the festival, though. This look of the festival, how marketable is it?
Look, the Crop Over Festival was established, believe it or not, in the 70s for tourism purposes, but it has long gone past that. It is our national festival. Yes, there's a tourism component to it, but I would like to think that if we get the larger aspects correct, as the president pointed out, the developmental aspects for young people, the tourism end will follow, the marketing end will follow. I'm not dodging your question. I'm saying simply that if we develop the festival nicely, the marketing will follow. It is already a very strong brand. It brings a lot of people here from the region. So whatever we do to improve the festival will only help us in that regard. But if you want something about, I can give you something for summer now. You're gonna like this, Calvin. We got a promise you're gonna report it. And Mr. Starcom as well to make sure you tell Stetson that they're able to report this. This summer is the second consecutive summer we will not have a single cruise ship birthday in Barbados. And that is the first time in 40 plus years. We have not had one word of English from any government official on that abominable state of affairs. Now, you say that it's only one ship a week or two ships a week, but we were told that having done a solid for the cruise lines during COVID, that we would reap rewards from it. Here it is. Destinations that turn their backs on the cruise lines are seeing calls during the summer, and we ain't seeing one. And I think, again, to piggyback on Renee's point, we have to look at the long-term relationship with the cruise lines, because we've increased the head tax, we have increased the taxi rates, etc. And the airport service charge affects the home porters, so increases all around. And yet, we ain't necessarily seeing the commensurate. We did the COVID favor as well for them. So I think we need to start to think strategic about that relationship, because I'm not convinced that they are that appreciative. The reality is they're making their decisions based on the balance sheet. And that is why we are once again without cruise ships. Nobody talks about it. And instead of spending 45 minutes in the well of the house responding to me about the airport, that's what Ian Gooding should be talking about. It's a serious point. And we want to know going forward what that position is. And it relates to your summer crop over thing. You got something. You happy now?
well, and also we can add on the point of the artists. And it seems that the Barbados Party will recognize the artists during the election time. So when the CEO of the NCF was talking, she spoke to the relevant stakeholders. I would like to understand which of the relevant stakeholders she spoke to, because the artists that were complaining, obviously, they weren't relevant to the government. Furthermore, I don't know if you guys would recognize that the Frederick Smith School this morning, students turned up for school and were turned away. 2 days ago, the union made a point in a call that they were having issues with the SBAs, they were having issues with having resources, and obviously that call was ignored by the Minister of Education. And it seems that this morning, the teachers did not turn up or other staff did not turn up for work. So students turned up for school, and the reports coming into us, parents calling us, person calling us. It seems that all the students were turned away from school, and that's a tragedy. Where is the silent Minister of Education? Where is Miss McConney? It seems that she can only come out to bluster and blunder about she's not going to resign after IDB survey, after the debacle of the ID project that she pioneered. I think we need to remember that a lot of the recent tech debacles and the issues with technology in this country stem from one person. Miss K. McConney, you can point the finger directly to the line. The IDB survey, the IDB project was pioneered under Miss when Miss McConney was the minister. Now, Davidson Ishmael had taken over and continued the line of incompetence, but it didn't start with him. It did not obviously start with him. So we have to remember that. We have to call these people out for these issues. Any final questions? Okay. Thank you very much. I want to thank the media for attending. I want to thank Democratic Labour Party members and supporters and sympathizers for tuning in with us for our monthly press conference. Those at home and abroad, and those who are watching online, thank you very much. And we look forward to our further engagements with you. And have a great weekend. Also, it's National Disabilities Month, and we send our best wishes to the folks at the Disability Unit and to the NGO support that we give all of our support whenever we can to those organizations. Thank you very much. And also, yesterday was International Women's Day, so I say happy post-International Women's Day to all the women in the Democratic Labour Party and all the women in Barbados. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Very well done.